Hi, this is CKnappenberger, and this is my EDL portfolio for my Building Leadership program at Fort Hays State University. I'm going to start first with my goals. I did a couple things with my fieldwork with proactive discipline, working along with the vice principal, and I would like to continue that as I work in the building before I get an administrative job. And then my goal, obviously, long term would be to get an administrative job. My next is my leadership philosophy. In my leadership philosophy, I'm very grounded in you reap what you sow. If I need something from my building or I'm going to request something from my staff, I need to be able to do it myself and be willing to do it myself. Character is one of the focuses I have, which is leading with integrity, because it's the basis of trust in a building. And also another basis of trust is consistency and transparency, kind of making sure that I believe what I'm doing and that I continually do that for my staff. So however I react to something or do something or request something from them, then I'm consistent with that and I'm transparent in what it is that I'm looking for. Along those goals is also the empowerment, empowering my staff to be leaders, to take on leadership roles and to give them the tools necessary to be able to do that. Looking at my program of study, I started in the program in August of 2018 and I'll be done in December of 2019. The next thing being my resume. My resume has been updated to include my coursework here at Fort Hays and to also change my objective to looking for a position in educational leadership. The next piece is my annotated bibliography. The annotated bibliography was one of the longest things to do and kind of one of the things that I thought would be the most difficult in kind of creating my portfolio. And I was very happy to learn so much from all of the research that I did and to find a lot of articles and things that are going to help me in my future position. Because like I said, it was a huge undertaking, but I found a lot of information that I know I'm going to find useful into my next position, opinions that I agree with and also opinions that I disagree with, things that I want to make sure that I don't do as a future leader in a building. Looking at some of my activities that I completed for my fieldwork. In my district activities, the first thing is in category 1, vision and goals, was my yearly department meetings. I was able to shadow the director of curriculum and instruction for New Milford and meet with her for an entire day, well, most of the day actually, kind of meeting with different departments, talking to the liaisons, the principal of the high school, the guidance supervisor, and just kind of looking at how programs develop and the needs and budgeting and where money comes from and how money gets allocated based off of different budgets. Another thing was ELA district program planning. I was able to kind of align curriculum from K to 12 in the ELA department and kind of like see how things go and to kind of coordinate with different educators that way. My vice principal asked that I become an EpiPen delegate. This allows me to get the safety training I needed. And in case of emergency, if an administrator wasn't around or the nurse wasn't around, I could administer an EpiPen. National Night Out. This is another district activity in which the town gets together in the summer and they have a big thing behind Borough Hall where they have different community members come and groups and everyone kind of has a table and represents that table. And I was able to represent the New Milford district there. I was the administrative liaison for the INRS committee. Administrators couldn't always be at INRS meetings, so last school year I was asked to step in as part of my fieldwork to kind of be the administrative kind of representation. If at any point they thought they needed an administrator and that like my role, I couldn't fulfill the role, then they would ask an administrator to come in, but I was present at all of the INRS meetings. The last district activity I have for education systems was my FERPA presentation. I created it in one of my classes, and it was helpful for the district to kind of show new staff members the importance of the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Acts and kind of what New Milford expects of its staff from those rules and regulations. Looking at elementary, some of my activities from elementary, some of the highlights. The timeline for an IEP process. This was looking at vision and goals. One of the big philosophies that Mr. Davies at the elementary school had was this idea of meeting each student's individualized needs and make sure that they get the instruction that they need. So for that in elementary, when we are kind of seeing if students qualify for special services, I created this visual of the IEP process and kind of how things go during that process. I was able to sit on an articulation between the elementary school and the middle school and looking at kind of best practices, summer reading, different rubrics that they use, kind of how they handle strengths and weaknesses in writing, and how can we kind of help to align. That way, I was able to shadow, like I said, I don't teach either one of those grades, so I was able to shadow the administrators at that meeting. This was one of the best things that I was able to do. I spent an entire day shadowing the elementary school principal to kind of see what happens from start to finish in a day. And throughout that day, I was able to sit in on an interview for a new staff member. I was also able to sit on 2 observations of teachers, both tenured and non-tenured. So it was really interesting, and I was able to use the software. I was able to pick the brain of the administrator to see how he handles a observation from start to finish. And I really learned a lot, and my eyes were kind of open to what it is that is required for an observation. The elementary Valentine's prom, I was able to help. I replaced my administrator on the planning committee for that. I worked with parents and community members to plan this event for the elementary school students. I also organized the volunteers of older students to work with the younger students at the event itself. During a district level meeting, it came up about a student in special education at the elementary school who was a real issue, and they were struggling to figure out discipline procedures for this student. And in that, they were trying to figure out if they were disciplinary actions or if it was just a manifestation of his IEP. And because of that, they were kind of looking at like the differences between discipline procedures for students with IEPs and without IEPs. So this was a visual I created in class that I shared with the elementary principal. This was elementary move-up day when the 5th graders come to the 6th grade, up to the middle school and 6th grade to see kind of what's going on. There are still 5th graders. They need to be transported to the school. Their student volunteers need to be organized, and I helped out with that process. Also, an elementary walkthrough. Part of the special education elementary's kids are housed in the middle school, and therefore I was able to see the vice principal walk through one of the classrooms looking for appropriate instructional strategies, and him realizing that like today wasn't the day for that, and that to watch the teacher meet her students' social and emotional needs more than their academic that day was an eye-opening experience. I have my secondary activities. So my first secondary activity is looking at the 8th grade team building. This was one of the things I was most proud of in my field work, was I was able to work with the administration to find a way to kind of have our kids have more ownership and more of a connection to each other and to the building. And therefore we were able to kind of restrict some of the discipline that was necessary. We were able to kind of be more proactive with our students than reactive. And therefore there was a transformational change within the 8th grade behavior last year. I led one of our full team meetings in which we talked about different things that were going on in the 8th grade and activities and things that needed to happen. This year, I was asked to review all the PDP goals for the 8th grade teachers. Instead of them handing them directly to administrator, they had to hand them into me. I needed to approve them first, and then our principal approved them after that. I was able to see what goals our teachers had set for themselves. I was able to do special education interviews, and this was just to kind of see how people in special education view a building leader and what they're looking for in a building leader that's going to help lead a special education department. I was able to interview the director of special services, a special education teacher, as well as an instructional aide for this project. I was able to help with the master schedule. This was very interesting, and from start to finish, the vice principal had me sit down on his initial planning meetings, how he puts a schedule together, how he does class assignments, classroom assignments. The colorful one on the bottom is classroom assignments, and then on top is part of the special education master schedule that I was able to help work on last school year. The NJSLA schedule, using last year's schedule as a guide, I was able to create the schedule for class coverage and Chromebook usage because we weren't a one-to-one district at the time. So I was able to kind of do that and help. And then the vice principal checked it, obviously, but that was the schedule that we used for testing last year. The proactive discipline plan, along with my building administrators, this was a new plan for discipline, kind of being proactive about certain things, setting expectations, meeting with the class as a whole multiple times to go over our expectations and giving them a spot to ask questions and talk about stuff that they were worried about or things that were concerns that they had to kind of help to prevent some of our issues. This was service learning. There's a service learning project where all the students in the 8th grade have to do a service project. But this day of sharing was one of the things I did with my field work, which was kind of inviting the mayor and the town council and the board of education and the board president and the superintendent and local Congress people to come and view the projects, and so the kids could present to them to show them what they cared about and what was in the community. This built a great relationship between different stakeholders and people that are important in the community. It also helped build relationships that can now be used for future service projects. Teacher Leader Committee, I was a participant in this, in which we looked at retake and reassessment policy in our new grading system at the middle school. We looked at things, we edited, we revised in order to put out an official grading philosophy. As part of my shadowing the director of curriculum, I was able to look at some high school course changes and kind of the initial meeting for planning out the schedule for next year at the high school, with kind of staffing resources coming from the director of curriculum. This year, instead of the vice principal taking over the annual 8th grade trip to the theater, I took it over for the last 2 years and paid the vendors, made the arrangements, and planned the trip for the entire 8th grade. I also attended the field trip equality meeting. This was a meeting in which we had to meet to talk about making sure all of our field trips met all of our students' needs and that all students had access to these field trips on an equal playing field. Those are my secondary activities. I have my activity form, which has all of my hours and things like that in the spreadsheet. My administration verification, I got to shadow Mr. Scott Davies, the elementary principal at Gibbs. I got to my shadow and work with my field supervisor, which was the vice principal at the middle school, Mr. Timothy Coughlin. And I was also able to shadow and work with and interview and talk to the director of curriculum for the district, Ms. Lauren Odaska. So those are my administration forms. The last thing would be my reflection. I had such a wonderful experience in this program. I really learned a lot. I was able to talk to my administrators in a different light. I was able to learn things that I never would have known before. I was able to see how they handle certain situations, and it was really enlightening. I thought I kind of knew everything. I was going into it slightly laissez-faire in the beginning, and then kind of realized there was a lot of stuff I didn't know. As I got further into the practicum and I was able to shadow the elementary principal and shadow the director of curriculum for the day down at the board office, it was really just this enlightening kind of opened my eyes to the different fields of administration and the needs of each different building and kind of environment and things like that. One of the things I did look at in my reflection was having more of a support system for new administrators, not hiring, like a brand new administrator when they're the only one in the building, and looking at, in order to kind of better prepare them coming out, is to have resources and mentor programs for administrators. A lot of them spoke about, a lot of it was learning on the job, which is going to happen, but kind of having those things and looking for ways that we can have different groups or communities of practice between administrators that are set up by the districts, so that the legwork is a little bit done, but then the support system is there. So that was what I looked at in my reflection. Like I said, I really enjoyed my time at Fort Hays. I enjoyed all my coursework. I really, really enjoyed my field work, especially being able to branch out and see other places. It was really eye-opening, and I think it really kind of prepared me for what might be coming in a new position. Thank you for watching my presentation on my portfolio. Thanks.